Hi, folks. I'm privileged to be able to interview David Kurten, the Heritage Party founder and leader and candidate for Mayor of London in the upcoming mayoral elections. David Kurten has been a member of the London Assembly, and he's joined me to tell me about what he plans were he to win. David, how are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you. Good to be here.
Great. Right, so first off, I guess, tell us about London. What do you think London needs?
Oh, it needs a change, definitely. I've been on the London Assembly for 5 years, and my job has been to question Sadiq Khan, who's been the mayor in that time. And I think he's been an absolutely terrible mayor. I mean, not talking personally, just talking about his record and just talking about the situation in London, because the mayor is in charge essentially of two things, which is police and crime and transport. And in crime, violent crime has gone through the roof, spiraling out of control.
Yeah, I mean, specifically with violent crime in London, can we be more specific on what the problem is there? I mean, is it just that random people in the street are just violent, or does it come from particular communities with a kind of particular ethos?
Well, I think it does. I think there's many things you can say about it, but the statistics they show 50% increase probably across the board on all the sort of levels and indicators. But yeah, there are various reasons for it. I mean, one of the reasons is there are more gangs, and some of the gangs are migrant gangs. There's, would the politically correct parties would not even go there and mention it, but there was actually interestingly an article in the Evening Standard, which, is not very, it is a politically correct paper, but a couple of years ago, they did interview a young Somali migrant, I think. And he said, there's violence on a level that is unprecedented, because you got people coming in from Somalia and Congo, from war zones where they're used to a level of violence that we haven't seen in the UK before, and they're bringing it to the streets of London in gangs. And I actually put that to the mayor, and he said that's a very dangerous thing to be saying, almost sort of accusing me of stirring up hatred, which is what they do when I sort of say anything that is true and correct, and actually try to put my finger on some of the causes of the problems. But there's no admission that there is a problem with migrant crime in London. What I would say sometimes black on black crime, because young black boys and young men are killing and stabbing each other more regularly than they were before. I mean, that is an issue, no question. And then that's also spilling out, into the wider community. So that is a problem. London's population and demographics have changed immensely over the last 20 years. When in 2000, there were 7 million people in London. Now there's 9 million. That's official. Actually, I think it's supposedly gone down this year because of COVID and so on, because a lot of Eastern Europeans have gone back to Eastern Europe because there's no jobs for them to do anymore. But, there's the demographics have changed a lot in London. So with new kinds of people coming in, there are new types of crime, and that hasn't been addressed, because it's politically incorrect to do so. Same thing as we've seen, up in Rotherham and Rochdale with the grooming gangs. There's no willingness to address the ethnic makeup of the perpetrators and the victims. And it's a similar thing in London as well. What I say is we need more stop and search targeted to the areas and the groups which are committing crimes, because then everyone will be safer. I mean, I don't want young black men to be going and stabbing and killing other young black men. I mean, who would want that?
No one.
So it
it's a horrible future. Present, in fact, is a horrible present, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you actually presaged something I was going to ask you on. Okay, so I completely agree with you. The problem appears to be ethnic gangs that have intergang wars. We've all seen videos of gang members stabbing each other in broad daylight on the streets of London. I mean, I've seen them chasing people into shops. There was a kid that was killed the other day just because, this happens over and over, because it is a part of like gaining cred in the gang, and it makes them cool and scary, and it seems to be a hell on earth as far as I'm concerned. And I looked into this a while ago. So under Boris Johnson's tenure, he brought in quite aggressive stop and search for knives, and crime went down, knife crime went down, and Sadiq Khan explicitly campaigned on a platform of that's racist and we're not going to do that, and knife crime just shot up under his tenure. So I take it we can safely assume that you're going to go back to the sort of we're actually going to do something about this mentality.
Yeah, absolutely. Stop and search is a very powerful and effective tool for cutting knife crime and violent crime. So I will implement it again. It's got to be intelligence-led. It's got to be focused on the areas and the groups which commit violent crime. More. I mean, there's no point in stopping and searching little old ladies, for example. You've got to actually go in, to the sort of people who are in the gangs and likely to be in the gangs. And you've got to work on the basis that people are individually responsible for their actions. Not this like, oh, you're a certain characteristic and therefore it's not your fault. It's society's fault. If you go down that road, then people are not responsible, and you get the sort of wokery that's coming in that says, oh, if you commit a crime and you're black, it's because you're a victim of society and society is systemically racist, and therefore white people are the source of all the problems and it's white supremacy, and that's what's causing someone to choose to go out and stab someone. No, if you join a gang and you go and stab someone, that's your choice. You're responsible for your actions. And I know for some people, they've had a harder life, they've had a harder background. Of course, we all have different backgrounds. I mean, it hasn't been easy for me, but I am where I am. It's not easy for a lot of people, but you can't take away responsibility for your actions. So you've got to say that that's the case, and you can't sort of skip out on that. Otherwise, we just law and order breaks down, equality before the law breaks down. But things are harder. So for some people, we do need to address that. And in the black community, there's a much, much higher level of family breakdown.
Well, I see you've presaged my next question. Okay. No, it's fine. It's fine. Because clearly you've looked into this very deeply and you've spent a lot of time thinking about it. And it sounds like you have the 2012 David Lammy opinion on the problem, the origin of the source of this problem. If you'd like to let me know what you think.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is, again, something I questioned Sadiq Khan on. And I said, look, it's related to family breakdown. Even the people that did this interview I talked about with the standard, the black boys in the gangs, they said, look, we don't have fathers. Social media is our father. And then they get into gangs, and then you've got a gang leader and they replace the role of the father in their life, but they're not positive, they're negative, and they're destructive. So if kids, boys in particular, need fathers to show them how to be a good man, to bring them up, to be, a man who is honorable and is positive and constructive in society. If they don't have that, that's one of the basic indicators that shows if you don't have it, you're more likely to get involved in crime, destructive behaviors, drug abuse, depression, suicide. All of these things come from not having a proper, stable family. This is, everybody knows this, but it's denied by the politically correct wokerati, which is what you've got in charge of London. It's what you've got in the House of Commons, in charge of Westminster now as well. I don't see much difference between Tory and Labour in these things. They're both as politically correct as each other. But I did specifically question Sadiq Khan on this. There's a video there. I'm going to re-upload it, in a couple of days, because it's very interesting. I said, look, this is the cause of it. Black kids, the family breakdown in the black community is much, much higher than the white community. And in the white community, it's much, much higher than in the Pakistani, Indian, Bangladeshi community. Their families are much more stable. And you've got there black boys, black young men are more likely to get into gangs than the other ethnic groups. in society in London. And yeah, he was his usual condescending self, and he said to me, "I don't agree with your thesis," and just went on.
But the evidence is overwhelming. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Just simply saying I don't agree, that's not good enough. We need answers. Okay, Sadiq, what is it? What's causing it? And of course, he'll just say racism, and it's like, okay, well, the racism of a city that in 2011 was minority English and is governed by a man of Pakistani descent. It's like where is the racism here? It's a very progressive city, and if it's full of racism, isn't that condemnation of progressivism? But what I wanted to ask you is getting to the root of it. Then, why do you think these families are failing to cohere in the same way that the Asian families do? What do you think's at the root of that? Because I think that's important.
Yeah, that's something I haven't delved into too much. It is what it is. I mean, you can say it's a culture, but it's like, I don't understand, why this is. I mean, all I can say is my personal story. My mum was English, my father was Jamaican, but he left before I was born, and I never met my father. So, I'm, you could say, subject to the same kind of circumstances, but it does seem to be some kind of culture. Not every Jamaican father is bad. There are many who do stay with their kids and do a fantastic job, but it just seems to be more of a sort of issue among certain cultures that, it's accepted that you have, you have this language, baby father, baby mother, and the man is the baby father, he has a baby mother, then he gets bored and goes on to another baby mother.
This sounds all very American to me.
Yeah, it was American, Caribbean, but it's sort of, it exists here in some of the sort of, areas of London where there's this kind of culture exists. And, I'm not from that. I'm not part of it. So I don't fully understand it. And I don't, fully understand how to deal with it. But, I do know that before there was, I think that we've had a deliberate undermining of family values in the West for decades, starting in the 60s and so on. And we were promised, the sort of the sexual revolution. It's great. You can go out and you can be promiscuous and love who you want, whatever. And that had short-term pleasures, but it has long-term consequences, because what's happened now is, for many people, the idea of the traditional family, which is a stable bedrock, which you need, which is good for kids and bringing up kids and passing on your values from generation to generation and giving them the best possible opportunities and start in life, has gone. And that's not just gone, it's denigrated in the mainstream media. And I think that with the sort of gangster rapper culture and stuff, it glorifies just the free living, free life, get lots of material stuff, but treat your woman bad and just move on. And
Die
this
young.
is all sort of marketed to people, white culture and black culture, but it seems to be, it's obviously it's been more, its effect is more pronounced in some of the black communities, and it's been devastating to family life, and people just don't think that they need a family anymore. They've lost any sense of the value of family, and we're told today, I mean, one of the things that I campaign on a lot is I campaign against the introduction of this relationships and sex education they want to bring into schools to children, which will be compulsory. Parents won't have any choice anymore whether the kids will have to go to this lesson or not. And one of the things they want to teach children is there are many kind of families and they're all equal. Well, they're not. There are many types of families, because the traditional family model has been deliberately attacked and broken down. And now they're saying, well, there's lots of different types of families. If you don't accept them all, then you're not being inclusive and you're being nasty. But actually, if you don't say that the best, most stable model is the best and most stable model, then you're actually lying to children. And you might spare somebody's feelings in the short term, but you're actually destroying society and the chances of many children in the long term. And so, there's just no honesty about this. And this again is something I've had arguments and in debates with the other sort of assembly members in the London Assembly. But it's true. I see it's true, and and I cannot not speak the truth. It is, and this is what we need to start to improve things.
Yeah, no, I think you're completely correct. And I think that it's very interesting that you've attacked the idea of equality there, because equality is quite an abstract ideal, really. And if you look at reality, very few people are actually very equal in very many ways. In fact, it's hard to think of, I mean, I've met you personally, and what are you, 6'4"?
Yes.
I'm 5'9", and I don't feel very equal when we stood next to each other. But that's not the question, is it? That's the point. The reality is different, and you have to map your thoughts to reality and not the other way around, which appears to be what I think the left is trying to do. So it seems very much that the Heritage Party has a strong focus on family and family values, traditional family values, and I think that your thesis here, while denied by Sadiq Khan, is completely correct. I do think it's been a degeneration of family values and core, like the ethic of the family raising healthy children. But how does that connect to because the name Heritage, I think, is a very interesting name. I think it's actually one of the better named of the new dissident right-wing parties, shall we call you? Because this then connects it back to the country and the culture and the sort of continuity of civilization, doesn't it? It implies that there was something worthy about England that deserves preserving, and Britain that deserves preserving, which I think is also very much the opposite of the view of the current elite paradigm, like Sadiq Khan's paradigm. So could you expand on that a bit for us? Tell us what you think of Britain, and whether it's an evil, racist, systemically racist country, or maybe there's something here that's worth preserving.
Well, that's what we're being told, aren't we? And that's what children are being taught all the time, that Britain is bad, and they're only taught about slavery. I mean, there's such a focus in the media and the sort of elite, that we're a bad nation because of slavery 200 to 350 years ago. And that's nothing to be proud of. That was wrong, absolutely. But then we can be proud that we were the first large country ever in history to abolish slavery. And we're not just in our territory. We went round the world trying to abolish it all in other places. We stopped the Arab slave trade in East Africa as well, the Barbary Coast slave trade, which actually they used to trade in white slaves from Europe and take them to the Middle East. We stopped all of that, and we've got such a fantastic legacy to be proud of there, and also in innovation, in science and advances in technology that have helped the world. So many things we invented in this country that have gone around, and the way of doing things which is civilized and so on. And I think this is something that maybe people would not sort of pick up much, but you go to African countries sometimes, and they are actually very, very grateful that the UK gave Christianity to them. They're very grateful for that. And many of them are coming back to the UK, because we do have a lot of immigration from Africa back to the UK. And, I've met people from Uganda and Nigeria, and they say they're absolutely shocked at the state of our country at the moment, because they expected to be a Christian country with Christian values and live in the way that they do there. And when they're faced with the sort of degeneracy that we have, they're absolutely shocked with that. I mean, so that's another thing that, I'm personally proud of as a Christian. Not everyone might agree, but I think it's a good thing. So we've got so much to be proud of as a nation. We've got a fantastic long history, that go, I would see it extending back 1400 years to the Saxons, basically. So I would see the Romans as maybe a slightly different era, but from then it's a continuous history from the Saxons, and then the Vikings and the Normans and so on coming over. And through that, we've got Alfred the Great, who put in the basis of common law, and then the Magna Carta, and then we've got the sort of Bill of Rights of 1689 and so on. And this is a wonderful foundation for freedom and common law and liberty that we've got in our country, which is spread over the world. And most Commonwealth countries today have that legacy of freedom that comes from our legal system. system. So we've got so much to be proud of, and so much that we've given the world. And even in the last century, our forefathers, our grandfathers and great grandfathers generation laid down their lives to fight Nazi tyranny, and save the world, basically, which is something that we should be so proud of. And it's really absolutely terrible that you get some of these
Labour
really
Party members,
ignorant, university educated, programmed, drones. They're programmed into ignorance, and they go and they daub the statue of Churchill and say Churchill was a racist. I mean, this is absolutely, it's stupidity, it's ignorance, and some of them is deliberate, most of them are useful idiots, but really, this needs to stop. And so going back to the Heritage Party, I mean, this is what we're about. I mean, saying that we are a fantastic country, we should be proud of our heritage, and but it is under attack. And it's under attack from people like Sadiq Khan, who set up a diversity in the public spaces commission, and he wants to rename our streets and take down our statues and rename our public spaces. I don't want that. I want our public spaces to represent the fantastic history that we have. I don't want Trafalgar Square to be renamed as Diane Abbott Square or something.
God, can you even imagine? Can
you imagine?
God, it sounds awful, doesn't it? But you're exactly right, because it is coming from essentially the Labour Party, this kind of revolutionary fervour to tear down statues, to rename all of our historic monuments and areas, and like generally attack Britain in any way that they can. And I'm really tired of seeing it. And so it's great to hear someone who's at least in opposition to that and will speak it publicly, because I think one of the things the Conservatives are just not nearly firm enough on is this point, because it's so obvious. There's a malevolent attack against the concept of Britain and Britishness. So let's expand it back to London. What else can be done in London better that Sadiq Khan has not done or will not do?
We talked a lot about crime. Okay, so that's one of the major things that the mayor's in charge of. The other thing is transport. And, transport is a big issue in London in a way that maybe it isn't in other smaller towns and cities, because what Sadiq Khan is doing is putting in road narrowing and road restricting measures all over the place. There's pop-up bicycle lanes, there's barriers going in the middle of the roads, to expand the pavements but take up lanes where cars and buses and lorries can't drive. And then there's these things called LTNs. It's a big issue in London. They're called low traffic neighborhoods. Essentially what's happening is that some of the boroughs in London are looking at neighborhood, and they're putting blockages on all the entrances to the road so that cars and vehicles can only get in and out through one entrance. Or either they put physical planters there which actually physically block the road so you can't get in, or they'll put up cameras so if you go through a certain entrance you get £100 fine or something like this. And people are up in arms about this all over London, because it's just stopping people from traveling in their cars freely. Used to be able to do.
I mean, what's that done for the traffic situation in London?
Well, there are these ironically named low traffic neighborhoods have actually created a high traffic congested city. Wherever they are, there's more congestion and people can't get through. And people, they find that they need 5 or 10 times as long to do a journey, because they can only go in and out from one entrance to a certain neighborhood or area. And then everybody wants to use that one entrance. So, it's absolutely mad. And this is going along with the so-called green agenda, because it's ostensibly to cut pollution, but actually it's increasing pollution, and it's just making life very, very much more difficult for vehicles. But whatever you think about cars, it's also stopping emergency vehicles, because you get ambulances and fire engines can't get through where there's a blockage, and then they can't attend a fire, or they can't attend a sick patient, and people have suffered because of that. Or police, they can't go with their car and attend a crime and cut crime. So these have got to go. It's absolutely insane thing that's going on in London. But it all comes down to this. The people are obsessed with this whole green agenda. I mean, the world's gone green mad at the moment. And, you've got this G7 summit coming up in Cornwall in June, and they're all going to be talking about net zero carbon and climate change, COP26, where they're all going to make an agreement to, cut carbon dioxide emissions and, more as though it's some demonic gas when it's not, and to bring in the so-called green economy, whatever that means. It just means that we're not going to have much real energy. And we're going to sort of close off all our streets to vehicles.
Yeah. So what would your solution? Well, if you even view it as a problem, would you have a solution for that, or would you merely return to business as usual to make sure that Sadiq Khan isn't jamming up all the roads?
Yeah, rip them all up, basically. I mean,
that's what I like to hear. To be honest.
Yeah, exactly. It's ridiculous. I don't think we don't need this at all. We don't need any road blockages that weren't there before. I mean, get rid of the pop-up bicycle lanes. I'd get rid of all the sort of barriers to neighborhoods and streets. I'd get rid of this barrier, the barriers between the curb and the road that they put in. All of these things, they just need to go, because it's absolutely crazy to have big main roads, which normally have 3 lanes on them, cut down to 1 lane for vehicles, and then 2 lanes given up for one for bicycles and another one to put the bus stops down them. It's absolute madness. So, everybody is suffering from it. Anybody who uses a car or a vehicle or makes deliveries, or tradesmen who need to use the roads, they're all suffering from this. Businesses are suffering. The businesses have been absolutely hammered this year with the whole COVID situation, but this is just another hammer blow on top of a hammer blow. So when we can get back to normal a little bit, they can't actually get anywhere on the roads. It takes 3 times as long to do a journey. So obviously businesses can't do business as normal. So I just this is a big issue, as I say, in London. It might not be so relevant in other places, but it is something that needs to be addressed, and we need to just stop following this mad green agenda and open things up to the free market. If people want to buy electric cars, great. Be subject to the free market. We shouldn't give them a subsidy.
They won't need it, will they? If it's genuinely the better alternative, then people will choose it because it's a good idea and they think it works and it will be helpful. We don't need to do anything. And look at Elon Musk's popularity with the Tesla cars. I mean, it's already happening. It seems weird to need to artificially push something that's already going on. Why do anything? But I wanted to bring it back to a bit of a critique of Sadiq Khan, because he's obviously the front runner at the moment, so he's worthy of being critiqued, in my opinion. Let's talk, if we can, about Sadiq Khan's fiscal responsibility or lack thereof, because I do not suspect, I don't follow London politics as minutely as, of course, someone on the London Assembly, so I'm only tangentially aware of Sadiq Khan wasting millions of taxpayer money on various cultural, whatever that means, spending, and various other things like decorating the London Eye in the EU colours and things like this. How would you rate his fiscal responsibility when it comes to managing London?
Yeah, pretty terrible. Pretty terrible, actually. The GLA has got quite a big budget. It's got about £17 billion a year. It's a big budget for that. I mean, the biggest part is transport. A lot of that is capital expenditure. So Crossrail, for example, which is this big new line that they're going to put in east to west across London. And that was supposed to open at the end of 2018, but it didn't. It's been delayed and delayed and delayed, and apparently it's not going to open now until 2022. And the chances are it won't even open then, because we were only told about this about 3 months before it was due to open. Oh, it's not going to open on time, and it's been delayed and delayed and delayed. But so he must have known, had some kind of inkling about this beforehand. But this is now turned into a sort of a black hole that's needed an extra 1.5 billion, and then it will need a few more as the years go on. So I mean, this is just a disaster, really. As for the police, what's happened with the police force is that police numbers have gone down. And from when they were going down under the Tories, under Boris Johnson, they've continued to go down under Sadiq Khan as well. But I think they didn't need to, because what he's done that I disagree with is he's spent hundreds of millions on these bicycle lanes, which he could have used to keep police stations open and to keep police numbers up which then meant they could have done more community policing and kept violent crime under control. But instead, he's pursued this green agenda. So this is another thing that it's actually affected London's finances, and I think indirectly affected the crime rates, because, the first priority is to keep London safe. You've got to do that. And then we can all enjoy everything else. But he's not kept his eye on the ball on that, but he's actually gone completely crazy for spending hundreds of millions of pounds on these bicycle lanes and so on, which is really wasteful.
Sorry to interrupt. What were the cultural things that he was doing as well? Didn't he have a bunch of cultural initiatives where he gave millions away for? I mean, I don't even know what the things were. I just saw the headlines and thought, oh, God, that sounds like a waste.
Yeah, there's millions here and millions there. I can't remember exactly all of them. I mean, one of them was, I think he wanted to open a beach somewhere on the Thames, like for one summer, and it was like, there was, why are you doing this? I mean,
a beach
who's going to go to the beach and in
who wants to go swimming in the Thames
or something? So there's all kinds of things that there's this diversity commission that he's doing now, which is £1.5 million or something, for people to look in, changing the names of streets and so on. I mean, this is ridiculous waste of money there. But his staff, the staff in the GLA has gone up massively. I think, I'm not sure the exact numbers, but it's approximately started about 800 when I joined. There's about 800 staff at City Hall. Now it's over 1,000. So, I think he's got a team of over 30 people looking after his publicity. So, why does someone need so many people, to do his publicity for him? Yeah, well, they're all going to be on like big salaries. So, we need to cut the number of staff in City Hall. We really don't need that many. I mean, the building, actually, City Hall, was designed for about 450 people, but over the years it's got more and more and more people going in, and now you've got people working at home. So the idea is, well, they can have as many staff as they want, but they're all going to work at home, and just sort of dial in on Zoom, to talk to each other. But so
there's not even a physical limit now. Now it could just be as many dependents on Sadiq Khan's regime as he wants.
Yes.
Speaking in these terms makes me think that you're a small government kind of person, sort of person who thinks that the government should be as the minimum size necessary, so it costs the taxpayer as little as possible. This I think would contradict with the philosophy that underpinned the lockdowns. How do you feel about the lockdowns?
I think they're completely unnecessary and completely disproportionate. I was against them from the beginning, and I got a lot of stick for that. But what I saw from the beginning is, I was quite worried when I saw reports from China in January and February 2020. But there was a day, I think it was about the 6th of March, something like that, where the narrative just completely flipped around and changed from being, don't worry about this, it's no worse than the flu, to like, this is terrible, we're all need to lock down, and if you go to the Cheltenham Festival, you're a COVID-idiot. If you go to the pub, you're a COVID-idiot. And, anyone who disagrees with this is killing their granny. And, shut up, we've got to lock down because there's a pandemic coming, and if you don't lock down, you're all going to die. And the narrative just switched like that. And I'm like, there's something wrong with this. It's so obvious, when the propaganda just starts on all the channels all at the same time, which is what happened in early March. So, I could smell a rat immediately when that happened. And yes, there was a spike in total mortality in April and May 2020. Which happens sometimes in the flu season anyway. But it wasn't, it maybe doubled for a couple of months, but it wasn't the Black Death. It wasn't Ebola, or wasn't yellow fever or something like that. And then it went back to normal. Actually, total mortality went below normal for a few months after that. And since May 2020, total mortality hasn't been any different to the 5-year or 20-year average in the UK. So it's essentially, since May 2020, there has been no pandemic. but we've still kept on locking down, destroying our civil liberties, destroying our businesses, mental health, everything. But it's absolutely wrong. It's crazy. It's insane. But you say this, and the Rottweilers of the mainstream media come at you, not with logical arguments and science. They come at you with smears, like you're an anti-vaxxer, you're a conspiracy theorist, you're a COVIDio. When they do this, you know that they actually don't have a rational, intelligent, scientific argument. They're just propagandists, psychological, warfarers, and smearers. That's what they are.
I mean, so, if they had an argument, they'd present it, wouldn't they? Yes. So you know that when someone starts attacking your character or just smearing you, then you know that they haven't really got anything proper to say. So I assume that you are on the side of the small businessman with the philosophy you've espoused so far. So what is it that the Mayor of London do you think could do for small business? Because usually this is considered to be the backbone of the country, and that has really changed over the course of COVID, because it's been small businesses that have been suffering, not the big businesses as much. So what do you think of that?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, it seems like the government is making war on small businesses and doing everything possible to hurt them and to put them out of business. And, like you say, there's been globally a huge transfer of wealth from individuals and small businesses to the biggest businesses. They love it. What the mayor can do, I mean, he obviously doesn't have the power to repeal an act of parliament, but the mayor is in charge of the police. So what I've said is that if I'm the mayor, I will have a policy of non-enforcement of legally repugnant regulations that undermine our fundamental freedoms and human rights, which is the freedom of assembly, freedom of speech, freedom to trade, freedom to meet each other, freedom to protest. All those things should be protected. The police, when a person becomes a police constable, they swear an oath, and part of that oath is to uphold human rights. And so every police constable that hasn't upheld our human rights has gone against their oath. They need to make a decision. They shouldn't follow blindly. This is why this country is different to Nazi Germany, or should be, that the police constables are supposed to use their minds to not follow tyrannical regulations. Otherwise, we're like Nazi Germany. Otherwise, we're like Bolshevik Soviet Union. Yeah. But a lot of them have done, and they've just gone and said, oh, it's not my fault, I'm just following orders, we're in a difficult situation, while they go and arrest someone for sitting on a park bench. No, you are responsible, police constables, for your actions. You are individually responsible for upholding your oath. And I will make it very clear to the police officers, I expect them to uphold their oath to protect fundamental human rights. And that means not going into churches and closing them down, not hassling people for sitting on a park bench, or for legitimate protest against an act of parliament which people disagree with. So that's what I will do as mayor, and I might have an argument with Priti Patel about that. Okay, but I'm bigger than her, so that's not an actual physical threat.
Obviously.
But before I get someone comes and says, "Oh no, he's a
no." Obviously, that was a joke. But I love the answer though, because that's a fantastic way of looking at it. As in, if it wasn't a good enough excuse for the Nazis to say we were just following orders, why is it a good enough excuse for the Met police officers to say, well, we were just following orders? And I think you're exactly right to say that it's not. And since we're on the subject of the Met, how do you feel about Cressida Dick? Would you retain her as the commissioner, or would you do something about that?
I wouldn't. I mean, she's obviously on a contract, so she'll have to serve out her contract. Yeah. But, there was a debate on a radio station, I think, a couple of days ago. And I think both Sadiq Khan and Sean Bailey, the Tory candidate, said that they would extend her contract for another 4 years or whatever it is. I wouldn't do that. No. So.
Why would the Conservatives do that?
Who is not a common purpose graduate, who's not politically correct, who's going to go in and say, right, police is there to do proper policing, which is to cut crime. Let's get rid of all this politically correct nonsense, looking after, going after hate crime or going after, people sitting on a bench. Police are there to catch murderers, grooming gangs, rapists, burglars, thieves. You know, they don't even chase up all the burglaries in London. You know, they're more
Imagine
interested
my
in,
shock.
yeah, more interested in someone who's hate speech on social media than actually chasing a burglar. You know, this has got, it's all upside down. It's got to turn it the right way up again. So I need a police commissioner who's going to just, you know, excuse my language, but cut the crap and cut the crime. So yeah, look, the thing is, I get on well with Cressida Dick personally.
Sure.
You know, she's a nice person,
Of
but
course.
I don't think she's a very good commissioner. So I will be looking for a different commissioner.
Yeah, it seems to me that her judgment is a bit too progressive for reality, and the same thing with Sadiq Khan and almost everyone else on the left. Frankly, it seems that they just don't care, doesn't it? Right. So we've got a couple more minutes before we have to go. So, is there anything that I didn't ask you about that you think people should know?
Well, I mean, another thing that, you know, the Heritage Parties, we got a full manifesto, you know, so we've talked about defending our heritage, we talked about traditional family values, but there's much more to it than that. So, I mean, one of the things is national sovereignty. I think that's very important because we're out of the EU, not fully though, but we're actually getting entangled into so much more that is coming from the UN. You know, Agenda 2030, the immigration programs, the Marrakesh Declaration, the Barcelona Declaration, the UN Global Compact on Migration, which means that we won't be able to control our own immigration policy and so on. I think that's important. That's another thing that I put in our Heritage Party manifesto. We should have low immigration, not no immigration, but it should be balanced, and that should be balanced with training enough British young people to do the jobs that need to be done in this country, because for so long we haven't trained enough nurses, we haven't trained enough doctors or plumbers or engineers, and then there's been a shortage. Young people haven't got the skills, so then they have to go on to benefits or just stay in an entry-level job all their life because they haven't been trained properly. But then we steal talented people from around the world, which I think is doubly wrong, because, you know, we've got more doctors from Malawi in the UK than in Malawi. I mean, that can't be right. They should stay in Malawi to help Malawians and to build up the Malawian economy, you know, for example.
I mean, who trained them as well? Like, if a doctor is trained, raised and trained in Malawi, then it's the local economy, the local families, the local people who have paid for that person to live and exist and get their training. And then suddenly we say, right, come over here where we will just take your labor and give you £50,000 a year or whatever. But the resources that took are now essentially removed from that country. So it feels to me like a kind of new form of colonialism. It feels kind of gross, doesn't it?
It is. It's basically stealing talent from countries that need it. You know, surely we should be saying, you know, if we are a wealthy country, which, you know, well, that's debatable really, because we've got so much national debt.
We used to be a wealthy country.
We used to be. I mean, if you actually look at the bottom line, we probably like right down at the bottom of the table with, you know, actually assets. Anyway, but you know, let's assume that we are basically stealing you know, the talent and the skills and the people,
the human capital.
I hate the phrase human resources because it is sort of dehumanizing to men and women, but you know what I mean. The sort of talented men and women from other countries that we shouldn't be seeking to steal. We should be seeking to train our own and be self-sufficient. So that's part of our heritage. You know, we always were a fantastically self-sufficient country, so much so that we went around the world and taught other people how to be self-sufficient as well, and you know, spread the wealth around. And but that's all gone now. Or it's going. It's not all gone, because there are still some fantastic, you know, innovative and creative and hardworking people. They never get on the mainstream media because all, you know, the parade of, you know, mediocrity you see on the mainstream media is like a, you know, it's a parade of like people with big chips on their shoulder basically and no talent. But you know, if you look at real life in real towns and cities and villages around the country, you've got fantastic amazing people, you know, that are still there. They don't get seen, but you know, let's invest in our own young people and build the country up once again, restore our heritage.
David, thank you so much for joining me. This has been a really interesting and entertaining interview, and I wish you all the best. I hope that if not someone else, then it's definitely you to unseat Sadiq Khan. But maybe I'm just a bit optimistic. Thank you very much.
Thank you.